Well, welcome back to the garage, folks, and today we are saying goodbye to Mick's Triumph Scrambler 400X. It's been a very fun 2 months comparing it to the Royal Enfield Himalayan 450. Hope you liked the video series that I've been doing on the 400X. Really enjoyed it. A little bit sad to see it go, but we've got to make room for other stuff, and I will talk about that later because that's pretty exciting news. But just wanted one last look at the Triumph 400X. I really do like that red paint on the tank. I think it's the best looking color out of the bunch. Thanks again, Mick. Hope everyone enjoyed the video series on the little 400.
G'day guys, welcome back to another Q&A session. This one's a little different. I'm going to be on the go doing a few of these questions. I've been so busy that I've just had to record them as I'm journeying through life. So hopefully that's a little bit different for you. Let me know your thoughts down below regarding that, whether you like a little bit of vlogging. There's some stuff of me in the car as well.
Testing a new mic too, so if this sounds like absolute horse shit, I do apologise. One interesting comment was, what would I take, the Bear 650 or the Triumph 400X? Look, it's pretty easy to delineate for me. If I was a newer rider and I was wanting to get into the dirt and I was getting all excited about it, I'd take the 400X. It's got a little more travel. It is worlds apart weight-wise. You could pick this thing up all day, every day, if you're regular size. The Bear is 40 kilos heavier, thereabouts, so it really does matter. But for me personally, in my garage right now, I've got my off-road bike. I would take the Bear 650. It's the twin, it's got more power. I think it looks nicer. The colors are definitely more varied, and I think they're done a little bit nicer. It looks a little more premium than the 400X. It's dirt capable enough, like realistically with a Scrambler, my personal choice. I wouldn't be doing more than what you saw on video, dirt roads and twin tracks, that I did on the Bear anyway. So for me, it's the Bear 650. More power, that weight is also going to be nicer on the open road too. So I choose the Bear 650. Now the other comments were, there was a couple of comments actually on the Himalayan versus 400X video that I did, and a couple of people who both said they're regular viewers and like my stuff, so thank you very much, but they disagreed strongly with my characterization of the 400X, which is fine. I like differing views. It's quite good when people have different tastes and we all come together, because it gets a bit boring if we all love the same thing and we just go yes, yes, agree, because then we learn nothing. Variety is the spice of life, etc., etc. So they were saying I mischaracterized the 400X and that it's far more dirt capable than what I suggested on my videos. Well, yes, to a degree. If you put the right tires on this, maybe you did something with the suspension, put a little more crash protection, you could really take this places. Even with just a set of tires, you could go pretty deep into the bush if you wanted to, because it is quite light and manageable. That being said, is that the best tool for that job? I don't think so. There are far better suited bikes for that riding into difficult terrain. And that's the point I was trying to make. What Triumph made this bike for is what I'm doing now, commuting, in traffic, going to the cafe on the weekends, being a great beginner bike or returning rider bike, and doing some dirt, you know, some dirt roads, some easy twin track, maybe a little tricky section if you get caught up. That's about it. Yeah, so I don't think I mischaracterized it at all. I think, yeah, you could do that if you really wanted to, but it's not really what it's made for. Anyway, we're right back where the 400X lives, so goodbye old girl. It was a fun time, but time's come. It was fun while I had you, but now it's time to move on to bigger and more different things.
Would I recommend the Himalayan 450 as a beginner? Short answer is absolutely. I think it's got quite a few qualities that make it really approachable. One is the price, of course, very affordable, brand new, and already on the secondhand market, you can snap yourself up a bargain for a few thousand less with all the accessories done to it. It's one of the appeals of these entry-level bikes. 2 is the seat height. This adventure bike is pretty easy to get your feet on the ground despite having decent suspension travel and ground clearance. And getting your feet on the ground as a beginner is something that really helps with that reassuring feeling that you can kind of paddle along if things get tricky. 3 is there's plenty of affordable accessories for this bike, so you can kit it out the way you want and change directions depending on how your riding career goes, because we all have an idea of where we're going to head and what we're going to do, and then the reality of executing that, we might find I like this style of riding better, or I like that style of riding better. So the Himalayan has lots of accessories, and the bike itself is very versatile. It really can do lots of different things. So it's a hoot to ride on the road as well. So if you decide you don't like the dirt, you're not going to be stuck with a bike that's heavily focused on the dirt and can't be fun on the road, or vice versa. If you get into the dirt more and more seriously, this can be pretty good. Put the right set of tires on it and the right mindset, and you can get most places. Power, while is sufficient for any kind of riding you want to put in front of it, it's not so much that it's going to be overwhelming when you're learning to ride. It's not going to put yourself in a tree or get yourself in trouble like you would with a much more powerful bike starting out. If you are thinking seriously about getting off-roading, if you're wondering if this is a good bike for predominantly off-road riding, I always tell people go as light as you can while still maintaining the other requirements you have out of the motorcycle. If you are just focused on getting off-road in a proper way, you want to do goat trails, you're planning to push it a fair bit, then I would recommend going for a dual sport or maybe an enduro motorcycle, something that's going to be a good 50 kilos lighter than this, so that when the eventuality is that you drop it and drop it often, particularly as the terrain gets tricky, it's going to be easy to pick up. But if you are just planning to explore the back roads, a few easy twin tracks and a little bit of stuff that's tricky in between, you've got a bunch of good mates that are happy to help you out, this is going to be a fantastic beginner bike. Just think about the needs that you have. What are your priorities? Can you do the same sorts of things on a much lighter motorcycle? Just some food for thought, but generally speaking, hard to go wrong with a Himalayan 450 for a first bike. So good luck on the hunt, mate. I definitely recommend throwing a leg over, going for a test ride. So the next piece of news is huge. I will put this in adventure news as well, but I'm too excited not to talk about it. And this, I have to thank Simo for putting this on my radar about a week ago. I've since had plenty of other comments, so that's why I'm doing it in this video as well, just so I can stop getting comments about it. Yes, Kawasaki for 2026 is bringing the KLX300 to Australia. Thank God. So if you're international, you probably don't care, but here in Australia, we've been stuck with the old 250S since the KLX300 came out. Because the KLX300 doesn't have ABS, therefore it wasn't allowed into Australia. Much to my frustration, because it would have been a fantastic comparison to the CRF 300L, and these 300s are my ideal size of bike of dual sport for off-road riding. So I was shattered when I heard that Kawasaki could not bring the 300 to Australia. So I cannot explain how excited I am that it's actually coming to Australia. So I can 100% confirm that this is legitimate. I was a little surprised initially because there was no media coverage, no confirmation. It was just up on Kawasaki's website. So we were wondering, is this just an accident? Did they mean to put this up here? So yes, 100%. The KLX300, the dual sport version, not the R model that's an off-road ready bike that we've had here for years. The on-road dual sport version will be available. And the word is it should be available pretty soon. I'm waiting for confirmation from Kawasaki themselves as to when these will be available, but I don't think we'll have to wait till next year. I think this is a bike that will be arriving very soon. So the strange thing and the somewhat controversial thing, and the reason that Kawasaki couldn't bring it in the first place, was that it didn't have ABS. Oddly, you would think that because it's now arriving in Australia that it will have ABS and that hopefully it will be switchable. The interesting thing though is that Kawasaki doesn't list ABS as a feature on the bike on the website, nor do any of the secondary media outlets reporting on the Kawasaki coming here that it has ABS. So I have no idea if this has ABS or not. My feeling is if Kawasaki haven't listed it themselves, then maybe it doesn't have it. Now, your next question will be, well, how the hell is that so? If it couldn't come in because it didn't have ABS, how has it now arrived without ABS. It's kind of a contradiction there, Solid. And I agree with you, it is. But I do remember the DRZ 400E that I used to own and how it was able to be sold here in Australia from a little quirk in our laws here. So, allow me to run you through this scenario. I do not know if this is true, and I do not know if this will hold up legally speaking, but this is what I'm assuming has happened here. So the DRZ 400E that we have available here in Australia, the only model of DRZ that we used to have, it didn't have ABS. And the reason it didn't need it in this modern era and it didn't get flagged for that wasn't because of the grandfather laws. It was actually because it was classed as an enduro motorcycle. A lot of the old school guys are going to be like, no duh, Solid. E is for enduro. Look, guys, I know that, but as time has passed on, it's become a dual sport and it can come with pillion pegs. But here in Australia, the pillion pegs were removed. It had a certain amount of travel and a certain amount of features that allowed it to be classed as an enduro motorcycle, which I believe still do not require having ABS. So my thinking is perhaps this is what Kawasaki's done. They found out that small loophole, as it were, removed possibly the passenger foot pegs, and that has meant because they've got enough travel in the suspension, it's light enough and all its other features are in accordance enough for it to slip through on the enduro regulations rather than the road regulations. Ultimately, it certainly wouldn't stop me from buying one. Who knows, maybe one will show up in my garage at the end of this year. There's a little bit of inside information there for you to look out for later down the lines. We're on our way to go and look at a second-hand motorcycle. Now, the decision that's led up to this process, I talked about in my Q&A last month, where I talked about, because of the isolation of the city I live in Perth, Australia, and it's one of the most isolated capital cities in the world. So my ability to be able to get press bikes from the big motorcycle manufacturers is quite difficult because they're all over east. So that does mean I get invites to go and test bikes and get flown over to Victoria when I'm lucky enough to test bikes for a few days. But I'm never one of these guys that is given the bike to test for a week, a month, on my own time. Whereas if you're in the eastern states, you do have that opportunity because that's where the dealership network is. Logistics isn't as difficult because to get here from WA, it's 46 hours without sleep and without stopping if you wanted to get from Sydney to Perth. It's a very long drive. So that has driven me to the conclusion that perhaps it's time to really take a big bet on the channel and a big bet on myself and just buy the bikes myself. Now, I'm not the richest bloke in the world, so that doesn't mean I'll be going out and buying brand new R1300 GSs whenever I please. So I'm perusing the second-hand market. Now, the idea that came to me that I thought would be very worthwhile, mainly because it's a question I had for myself, as well as a question that you guys had in the comments section, that as good as these small adventure bikes are, like my Himalayan 450, the CF Moto 450 MT, the KTM 390 Adventure R, and potentially the BMW F450 GS, KLE300 from Kawasaki, etc., etc. A lot of fantastic small displacement bikes, but as good as they are, they're still relatively heavy, excluding the 390 Adventure R. But with the weight that these bikes have, particularly the Himalayan 450 that I have and the CF Moto 450 MT, they're basically 200 kilos, just shy. So the question I had when I was looking for them, and the question I get in the comments fairly regularly as well, is, Solid, what should I do? Because these bikes are so closely weighted to a middleweight, say a Tenere 700, an F850, F900 GS, etc., etc. They're so close to these bikes' weights, Transalp 750. Should I just bite the bullet and get a second-hand middleweight for roughly the same price that I could get a Himalayan 450? And I can never give a straight answer because it's about the circumstances, as well as I don't really have both bikes to test side by side. I've owned middleweight adventure bikes, I've owned small adventure bikes, but it'd be really great, I thought, to really test that theory to its full extent. How much middleweight motorcycle can you get for the price of a Himalayan 450? That's the crux of this video series that I've got planned. So I'm currently on the hunt for a middleweight adventure bike. Switch over to my hat because it's getting warm, but I don't really know what I'm walking into. Helmet, gloves, jacket, earplugs. We'll see how things go. So I'll see you on the other side. Maybe I'll show you a bit of the bike. I've got the helmet camera, that's what I'm recording with now. So I might take you along and discuss, and I'll see you in a bit. Wish me luck.